The Los Angeles Reign turned in a win over the Florida Panthers in epic fashion on Sunday night. We're going to talk about all of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Los Angeles Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everyone, my name is Sarah Avampato, host as always of Locked On Los Angeles Kings, here to talk to you about your favorite hockey team and mine, the Los Angeles Reign. We'll get to that today. But first off, thank you for making today's show your first listen of the day or the afternoon or the first listen of when you happen to open your podcast app right now. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. So, the Kings, the Reign, the injuries, the win, the still holding it down in the Pacific Division in the standings, all of that is what we've got on tap for today. So first off, if you're new to the show, thank you so much for joining us. It is a fun, exciting, weird time, I guess, to be following the Kings, to be looking in on them. And I'm glad that you have chosen this very show to do it as we, see what happens throughout the rest of the season. If you don't know me already, I've been covering the Kings since around 2016 or so. You may have known me over at Jewels from the Crown from SB Nation. Lately, I've just been doing this and basically shouting into the void on Twitter all about this team and the fact that we're in a playoff position, despite the fact that we have literally like the entire lineup hurt. So after two incredibly miserable games against the Sharks, one in which they blew it in overtime, sorry, that's probably my bad. I was at the game, and actually, I've got a pretty good win percentage this year with the Kings. At least they got a point. But, a loss is a loss, so whatever. The next game, they blew it even harder. They got shut out. And so we're like, well, this super stinks. And, every team has that one team that's like their nemesis that it shouldn't be. And with the Sharks, like we've always kind of been like, over the past few years, when the Sharks haven't been that great, we've been like, well, it's the Martin Jones factor, because of course Martin Jones is going to totally just kill it against his own team. Of course he is. And now Martin Jones is, of course, a Philadelphia Flyer. Sharks no longer have the Martin Jones factor. Sharks now just have the we're going to beat the Kings factor. But yeah, I mean, I feel like if you look at any of the top teams in the league, and I'm not trying to say that the Kings are one of the top teams in the league. They're hanging in there, but like, to be realistic, are they Stanley Cup contenders? Probably not. But I'm most familiar with the Hurricanes. If you don't know, I cover their AHL team, so I have to be kind of a little in tune with what's going on with the big squad. The Hurricanes have done like absolute crap this year against the Ottawa Senators. Just terrible, absolutely terrible. And just no reason for it. They just haven't been able to get it together, and whatever. The Kings, I feel like the Sharks, a little bit the Coyotes, are sort of that spoiler for the Kings, because it's just rough. I don't think we've won against them yet this year. We've got to play them more. It's gonna stink more, but here we are. It's March, and the Sharks exist to irritate us. Anyway, after those two games against the Sharks, we had even more injuries to deal with, because of course we did. If you haven't caught up with the latest injury list, obviously Sean Walker out for the season, tore his MCL, ACL at the beginning of the year. Alex Edler broke his ankle in early December, has been out since then. Really no sign at all of him whatsoever. Obviously being an older player, his recovery is going to take longer than, a Quentin Byfield. And also we don't know the severity of the break. So, I think we're just kind of like, if he comes back, he's a deadline acquisition. Great. Awesome. Okay, cool. Brendan Lemieux is out, injured. I believe it was an upper body injury. Victor Arvidsson is out, has been skating, but isn't ready to come back. Mikey Anderson, Drew Doughty, both out. So there's your top pairing. Andreas Athanasiou came back, looked great, was playing big minutes with the best line on the team with Deneau and Moore. Now he's hurt as well. And then add to that, Dustin Brown is hurt. Looks like some sort of hand, upper arm injury for him. And then, of course, this happened. Matt Roy is out with an injury. And then in yesterday's game against the Florida Panthers, towards the end of the game, Tobias Bjornfot left the ice in obvious pain, didn't return for the rest of the game. We were basically down to literally no defenseman. If you look at the Kings roster, right now, there are currently 11 defensemen on the roster. Anderson out, Bjornfot probably out, Doughty out, Edler out, Roy out, Walker out. Literally the only defenseman on this roster who has been here since day one of this season is Olli Maatta. So congrats to elder statesman Olli Maatta. Sean Dursey has been here for a while, but he's still a baby. Jacob Moverari's gotten a couple games in. Austin Strand was called up and played in this game against the Panthers, provided a much needed sort of physical presence on that back end, but not a ton of NHL experience for him. Jordan Spence has played in a whole 2 NHL games, so yeah, not great. We'll look a little bit more at the injury status coming up later in the show, but that win against the Panthers, look, this is a win that the Kings are glad to have gotten. It took them the shootout to do it. Adrian Kempe, Trevor Moore both scored in the shootout to get things done. Jonathan Quick looked pretty solid there. A lot of luck needed, and once again in this game, Kings led after the first period. Rasmus Kupari scored his 4th goal of the year on a line with Quentin Byfield and Gabe Vilardi. So we put together some of our top prospects, put together some of our great first-round picks, and surprise, they were one of the most effective lines in that game. Rasmus Kupari then got the Kings on the board in the first period. Second period, 2 quick goals within the first 4 minutes of the period from the Panthers gave them the lead. Third period, thank you to Jonathan Huberdeau for getting really extra frustrated at the end of the game. Elbowed Alex Iafallo, then got into it with Anze Kopitar. Kopitar and Huberdeau took matching roughing penalties, but Huberdeau got the extra for elbowing Alex Iafallo. If I weren't Jonathan Huberdeau, I simply would not elbow other players in the head and therefore put my team at a disadvantage. But hey, who cares? So in this one, thank you to that penalty. Thank you to Martin Frk for being, Martin Frk and putting in just an absolute bomb of a shot late in the third period. There was less than a minute left in the game when Frk scored on that power play, doing what we have seen him do all season long with the Ontario Reign, giving the Kings at least that extra point, sending it to overtime. And both goaltenders stood strong in overtime, particularly the Panthers, as Aaron Ekblad took a penalty in overtime. Kings were able to generate a little bit of momentum off of that, but nothing doing. Game goes to a shootout. Kings win. Jonathan Quick picks up a win in his 700th career game, ends Florida's winning streak, and most importantly, helps the Kings keep pace with the rest of the Pacific Division as they look to hold down that spot in the playoffs. We're going to look at a little bit more of what is going on with the Kings, the injury situation, and all of that coming up next on the show. But before we do that, let's talk about a big, important way to get healthy. This is a product that you can use every single day to improve your gut health, to improve your overall energy, your immune system, all of that stuff. Athletic Greens is a great way for you to quickly get a bunch of high quality vitamins, superfoods, minerals, probiotics, and all sorts of other stuff to help start your day out right. It helps support your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy. If you're me, you're basically tired all the time, and having a product like Athletic Greens is a great way to get your day started out right. It tastes kind of chocolatey, like dark chocolate. So, you're going to look at it and you're going to be like, this is plants, but no, it actually tastes pretty good and is a great way to help you just live your best possible life. life. And even more exciting to me than just the health impacts is the fact that Athletic Greens is working to help improve the world around them. For every purchase, they donate to organizations helping to get nutritious food to kids in need, including working with No Kid Hungry here in the United States. In 2020, the company donated over 1.2 million meals to kids in 2020. So right now it is time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially as we continue to navigate the flu and cold season. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day, and that is it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. So you are listening to Locked On Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And before we get back to the show, we've got some cool stuff coming up with the trade deadline right around the corner. On Monday, March 21st, that is, you guessed it, just next week. Tune in to Locked On Fantasy Hockey's live deadline reaction show to get all of the on-ice fantasy and betting analysis you need from hosts Steele Roden and Flip Livingstone, with appearances from our roster of local team experts. Plus, I'll be jumping on with a show as soon as we know what the Kings have done on trade deadline day. So make sure you keep an eye out on the Locked On Kings podcast feed /YouTube feed / the Twitter at Locked On LA Kings for all of our immediate reactions to the Kings moves. So the Kings had a great comeback win from behind. It was their 8th third period comeback, leading to a win for the Kings this season, and their 3rd in the past 10 days. They also did the same at Boston, at Columbus, and then again against Florida. All 3 of those wins have come in overtime or shootout. And hey, you know what? A win's a win. And especially, these are all 3 Eastern Conference teams. I don't even care that the other team got the other point. Whatever. Not important to me. Blah, whatever. Like I said, the Kings are keeping pace with the rest of the Pacific Division. Right now, Calgary leading the division, 79 points. They are 6-3-1 in their last 10 games. They lost their most recent game. I don't really see Calgary relinquishing that lead unless they happen to get hit real bad with the injury bug. Kings obviously in second, 74 points, 6-3-1 as well in their last 10 games. Edmonton has actually leapt up into the number 3 spot. They have 68 points. They're 4-5-1 in their last 10. They've won 2 straight. But here's the fun one. The Vegas Golden Knights, who really everyone just continued to assume was going to lead the Pacific Division, much like they have basically since they began existing. They have lost 4 straight. And I believe that they may be approaching a franchise record in terms of consecutive losses. I don't know that this team has even had to contemplate what a losing streak means. They are 3-7-0 in their last 10 games. Again, have lost 4 straight. Have 68 points, but have played more games than Edmonton, so they have dropped down into that number 4 spot in the Pacific. And, if you look at things in terms of the wild card spot, Vegas only barely clinging on to that number 2 wild card spot. The other day, I believe they were actually out of a playoff spot entirely, which was really funny. Looking at the other teams kind of below them in terms of the wild card, Dallas has lost 2 in a row. Vancouver is flirting with being relevant again. They lost their most recent game. Nashville is 6-4-0 in their last 10 games, won their most recent game. But really, it's bizarre to say, but you have to keep your eye on Vegas and see what happens with them and see if they keep sort of tail spinning. Their goaltending hasn't been great. Tons of guys are hurt. I think Max Pacioretty is out. Mark Stone, obviously kind of the heart and soul of that team, is out long-term with a recurring back injury. So just not looking great for them. And the Pacific, we've talked about this on this show. We've talked about this in some of my conversations on Locked On NHL on Wednesdays, where we look at the Western Conference. No one expected the Pacific Division to do this this year. Obviously, Vegas being bad is a surprise. All of the analytics kind of said that Seattle should be much better than they are, and instead they are struggling big time as well. They've also got lots of injuries that are impacting their play, as well as goaltending that it just isn't up to snuff. The Ducks sort of flirted with being relevant for a while, but now they're bad again. They've only won 3 of their last 10. And Edmonton, who knows? Edmonton is a super wild card here, like not in terms of wild card positioning, but just like at any given time, Edmonton, it's like Schrodinger's hockey team. Like they are both good or bad until you look at them, and you'll never really know which is which. Because on the one hand, they have 2 of the best players in the world. On the other hand, they have like no goaltending and no defense. So whatever. But the Kings, thanks to teams like Vegas losing, continue to hold on to their spot in second place. And, you know, the big points gap between them and Edmonton, 74 points to 68 points, means that like we're sitting in a pretty good position, and it feels very bizarre to think about it. And it's great that the Kings have banked all of this extra points and have gotten a little bit of a head start over teams like Edmonton and Vegas, who are chasing down to get back up into the playoff picture, because like we said at the top of the show, literally everyone is hurt. So as I mentioned, Tobias Bjornfot left that game early against the Panthers because of an injury, and that is, I'm gonna just, it's bad news. It's real bad news. It's not like Tobias Bjornfot is like our best defenseman or, you know, budding superstar. Like he's a guy, he's good. He will continue to be good for a while. But, you know, it's not like he's another Drew Doughty at the moment. If Tobias Bjornfot is going to be out, first off, the defenseman who played in that game against the Panthers for the Kings, our defensemen were Olli Maatta, Tobias Bjornfot, Sean Durzi, Jordan Spence, Jacob Moverare, Austin Strand. Like I said, Maatta, Bjornfot are the only ones who've been here the whole season. Maatta was always sort of supposed to be the 6-7 guy and is now pressed into much bigger minutes because of the injury to Alex Edler, who he was going to be kind of rotating with. To Bjornfot's credit, has been looking a lot better lately. Has been doing his job, which is to be not noticeable. So that's great. But all those other guys, Durzi, Spence, Moverare, Strand, have been AHLers. Durzi obviously has had the most time with the team this year, has pretty much claimed his spot on this roster and looks fantastic. So that is great. If Bjornfot is going to have to miss time, Matt Roy obviously was ruled out of this last game, uncertain on what his status is, but I don't think it's good. Christian Wolanin was called up as the extra defenseman for this game. He was the healthy scratch, so he would be eligible to draw back in. The only remaining defenseman in the Kings organization currently under contract with an NHL deal are Brandt Clark, who signed his entry-level contract, but obviously went right back to the OHL and is playing there. And then in the AHL, we have Helge Grans and Marcus Phillips. Both of those guys, fine defensemen. Grans has had some really great moments as a rookie. Phillips is a good depth player. Neither of them, I would think, are ready or should be in the NHL. But that is it. There are literally 3 defensemen in the organization who could come up to the NHL. And I think Clark, like, I don't even think you can call up Clark except it's like for an emergency. I don't think you can just yoink him from the OHL in the middle of the season. 3 defensemen not already with the Kings who could potentially be eligible to play. Even if you look at the Reign's roster, the Reign only have 5 defensemen on the roster right now. Grans, Phillips, Cameron Gauntz, who's on an AHL deal, Christian Kassestuhl, who's on an AHL deal and has spent some time in the ECHL, played a few games at forward for the Reign because they needed one and just shoved him up in there. And then Kevin Lohan, who's on a PTO, and yes, he is indeed Lindsay Lohan's cousin. But Rob Blake may find himself pressed into service before the trade deadline, but in ways he didn't want to be, because he just might not actually have enough defensemen to play the game at all. And that's bad. So we're going to take a look at what's coming up for the Kings schedule and what we're going to have to deal with in the near future coming up right after this on Locked On Los Angeles Kings. But before we do that, Let's talk Bet Online, because this is, of course, a super fun time of year for sports. It is, of course, the college basketball tournament, the big one. You know what I mean. It is finally upon us. From all of the latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net is the #1 source for all of your sports betting needs and information. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And of course, it isn't just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action, all at BetOnline. It is where the game starts. We've also got some snacks. If you're trying to live healthy, if you're trying to, make sure what you're putting in your body is full of nutrients and exciting stuff, well, in addition to the athletic greens we talked about earlier today, we've also got Built Bar. So if you don't know what a Built Bar is, well, you are in luck. They are delicious chocolate-covered protein bars. They don't taste like you're eating a protein bar. They don't taste like, oats and dates and like stuff. They taste like you're eating a candy bar. They come in a ton of amazing flavors, including the Built Puff, which is a delightful protein-infused marshmallow that comes in one of my personal favorites, the Churro Puff. You can also find great options like mint brownie, coconut almond, cookies and cream, chocolate cookie dough chunk stuff. Really, all sorts of delicious flavors. They are low in carbs, low in calories, high fiber, high protein, and just really all around delicious. And the best thing is that new flavors are coming out all of the time. So if you think a flavor might be good, chances are Built Bar is going to make it. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Stock up on delicious Built Bars today by going to built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. So it wasn't bad enough that literally all of the defense is hurt, but the Kings also don't have that great of a schedule coming up next. They have a lot of very important games on the docket. Coming up Tuesday, they're playing the Colorado Avalanche, literally the best team in the league. I'm afraid of this one. They're playing the Sharks again, the third time in 2 weeks. I hate that for us. And maybe this time we'll get a win. I don't know. Maybe not. There's a game in Vegas on Saturday. That game is going to be huge. That is a huge 2 points on the line for the Kings, who are really hoping to maintain that lead over Vegas in the playoffs and in the playoff picture. And that game, I don't care if they have to duct tape the defense together. They have to come away with a win in this game. Those 2 points are going to be massive for the Kings. Next week, Nashville, Chicago, Seattle, all games at home. Chicago, Seattle, both struggling teams that have had their bright spots. Nashville, another team that is looking to solidify their spot in the wild card standings. The Kings obviously are going to want to turn in a win against them in the event that the Kings slip out of the top 3 in the Pacific and are going to have to battle for that wild card spot. You're going to want to make sure you have more points than the other team competing for that spot. We round out the month with another game against Seattle and then back-to-back Edmonton and Calgary. That game against Edmonton is also going to be huge. I don't think that anyone's chasing down Calgary at this point, like I said, unless there are massive injuries. But again, you're not going to want to leave those points on the table with how the Pacific Division has been going. So this is a crucial time for the Kings, who are trying to do what feels sort of impossible, which is hold down that playoff position while dealing with the fact that literally all of their defense is hurt. I don't know what's going to happen. I think that the win against the Panthers was gutsy. This was a team banding together and doing whatever it took to get that win. It took a shootout, but hey, you know what? They got the job done. Jonathan Quick had saves when we needed him to have saves. Didn't love the goals against him, but I can't exactly pin them on him anyway. And it's just these next couple of games are going to be big character games. I always hate when teams say that, because I'm like, okay, great, cool character. We get it. You're all play for the jersey, the name, the logo on the front and not the name on the back, whatever. But this team needs to come together and show what they're made of. And it needs guys like our top line of Kopitar, Kempe, and whoever else is up there to step up. There's been a lot of talk about how they have just gone absolutely quiet. This team has really been driven by that second line lately. I'm liking what we've seen from the kid line, or as Jim Fox has called it on TV, the champagne line of our young stars of Velarde, Byfield, Kupari. Hopefully that'll also kind of jumpstart Byfield as well, who I think has obviously an enormous amount of potential, but hasn't really been set up for success so far. But, I think that we're seeing a lot from them to look forward to. And I think it's possible. I think it's possible to get through this stretch of games and still tread water at least. And I think it's going to be stressful and fun. And I'm excited to see what happens. And I'm prepared to be mad, and I'm prepared to be excited. I just, flip a coin on whatever's going to happen at any possible given moment. We, of course, are going to be keeping an eye on everything that happens with the Kings, and of course, the Ontario Reign, because they are one of the top teams in the AHL who have now just had their roster basically decimated by the Kings. So we're going to be talking a lot about them as well, including talking with Jared Schafrin, who is one of the voices of the Kings. He's their communications manager over at the Reign, but you can also hear him live on the broadcast. You can hear him doing features and game previews and all of that for Kings/Reign Insider. We're going to be talking with him later today for an episode that's going to go up this week. So if you have any last minute questions for Jared about the Reign, go ahead and send them over to me on Twitter at LockedOnLAKings, and I will get them on the air for you. Glad to be able to talk with him at this really fascinating time for the Reign. So keep an ear out for that as well this week. That's it for the show today. You can find me on Twitter, like I said, at LockedOnLAKings. I'm also personally on Twitter at RightSaidSarah. So go give it a follow, and make sure you're subscribed to this show so you never miss a single episode. Find it on your favorite podcast app of choice or on YouTube, and come back tomorrow and every day this week for more Kings news here on Locked On Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.